Hey guys, how's it going? Today I'm going to talk to you about the history of the Battle of the Selle and how it relates to the upcoming DLC Giant Shadow. Many of you already have heard about this DLC releasing soon, but I wanted to take a look at what the Selle map might look like based on the history of the battle and the real life location. So the history behind this battle in 1918, the German military sought to capitalize on the internal struggles that the Russian Empire faced in 1917, and eventually the Russians ultimately capitulated in March of 1918. So at the beginning of 1918, the German military transitioned 50 divisions from the east to the west and began to plan for an offensive in the spring of 1918. And this was the Spring Offensive, or Ludendorff's Offensive, or the Kaiserschlacht, the name used in Battlefield 1. I probably pronounced that wrong, so if you're German, don't kill me, please. But ultimately, this operation gained a significant amount of geographical territory, but strategically it failed to meet any of its main goals, such as the city of Amiens and the city of Arras. This operation was costly to both sides, allies and Central Powers, yet the German army was completely exhausted, and domestically and militarily they were running low on food. And in addition, after this massive operation, the German manpower in the West was depleted, and all of the advantages it had gained after the capitulation of Russia were diminished. So after this concluded, they were stuck on the back foot. Uh, the opening days of this operation are in game are represented by Saint Quentin Scar, and the failed attack on Amiens is also represented in the game, and together they make a complete operation, as you probably already played before. But moving on to the 100 Days Offensive, the last offensive operations the Germans launched from their spring offensive was ended in July, and it closed the door to all their offensive operations. And a little over a month later, in August, the Allies began their offensive to break the exhausted German army. With the help of fresh divisions from the United States, the French, the American Expeditionary Forces, the Commonwealth, and British armies, they all began a steady advance toward the German Hindenburg Line. The Germans retreated from almost all their gains made on the Western Front since 1914 and fell back to a defensive position called the Hindenburg Line, which had been created after 1917 after the Battle of Verdun and Somme. This line was created to prevent Allied breakthroughs and conserve depleted German manpower. So in September and October of 1918, along multiple points in the Hindenburg Line, the Allies broke through. The British and Commonwealth forces in the north broke through in the north near the St. Quentin Canal, and the French and the American Expeditionary Forces in the south, north of the city of Verdun. And on October 10th, the British Expeditionary Force retook Cambrai against a relatively light German resistance due to a general offensive across the entire line. So after the breakthrough at Cambrai, the British forces moved southeast towards the village of Les Chateaux and prepared to assault the German defenses on the east bank of the River Selle. Due to the costly battles of St. Quentin Canal and retaking Cambrai, the British Expeditionary Forces took 2 weeks to prepare for their assault against the dug-in Germans. And here's where things get really interesting for what we can expect for this map in Battlefield 1. The commander of the British Fourth Army, Henry Rawlinson, he was faced with a river crossing, a railway embankment on the other side of that river, and this embankment rose slightly above the terrain. So it was a very good position for defense for the Germans. And he had to capture, there was a ridge beyond the railway embankment that the Germans would also be defending. So on October the 7th, the British launched their attack on the German defenses on the ridge. And this was the interesting part of this is that it was launched at 5 a.m. It was under the cover of the fog. So the Selle River was relatively a relatively narrow river at the south end of the Les Chateaux village, and British soldiers originally placed just planks of wood, and they would just walk across the river, and they created Later in the day, they created pontoons to bring up supporting artillery to help them assault the ridge on the other side. And in, in game, I feel like this would mean that the map might actually take place early in the morning, with the sun slowly rising and creating more visibility, like in Operation Dawnbreaker in Battlefield 4. Based on the information I've found, the map could look like Gold Mud Railway in Battlefield 4. I bet all of y'all remember that. So as I feel like it's gonna be like Gold Mud Railway, and instead of the village in the north part of the Gold Mud Railway, it's just gonna be the airship that was that Dice said would be there. So I expect this map to have very wide open fields going up to the slopes of that ridge that's on the far east side. And Dice mentioned that there would be the crashed airship, so I think the airship will be in the middle of the field, and uh, the river and the railway track will be down the slope of the ridge, and the British will have to attack across the river and the railway, and then down the way up the ridge will just be the airship. So that's where I think the Germans will be. And of course, DICE will take their creative and artistic liberties with this map. However, from the information I've gathered, I just expect it to be Gold Mud Railway with a river along the railway track. Instead of like a town and Gold Mud Railway, there'll be a large open field with a crashed airship. And hopefully, with this, there's going to be craters, so this entire map just doesn't become an open field for snipers. I don't want a repeat of Sinai Desert, so I expect at least a few buildings. Hopefully, just a ton of craters. I don't know how it. From the pictures of France, it doesn't look like there's actually that many rocks or anything to hide behind, so this could be interesting. But the map could be set at dawn with the sun rising, and as the match progresses, the map might it'll probably have fog for dynamic weather. So yeah, that's it.